Okay, so in order to build an Oracle development environment, you need to have an Oracle database. So in this step, we are going to install an Oracle database 19c Enterprise Edition, and we're going to install it on Windows 10. So the goals of this section are to install a database on Windows 10, and I'm installing it on a Dell laptop that I actually got off of Craigslist. So it's not very powerful, but it's got, it's an i5 processor, 8 gig of RAM. It's probably, I think it originally started with Windows 7, so it's not a very powerful box. But we're going to install the database as a standalone database, and then we're going to configure SQLnet in order to talk to it. So our other servers or our other development boxes where we have WebLogic and Oracle Forms and Oracle Reports, or Oracle Apex, or Oracle JDev along with ADF, those are going to connect to this database. So one thing I've learned over the years is you do not want to run all these things, try to run all these things on the same box. The Oracle database itself is pretty lightweight when it comes to hardware resources, running it on Windows 10. But if you start to put a lot of other stuff on it, like you put JDeveloper and an Oracle database on the same box, things just aren't going to work. So what we're going to do is we're going to install the database, we're going to test the connection with SQL Plus, and then we're going to configure and test SQLnet in order to be able to connect to it from the other boxes on this little network that we're creating. So our installation steps are pretty straightforward. So the first step is we're just going to go to oracle.com and we're going to download the database software. Then we extract it into the installation software directory, we run the Oracle installer, and then we test it. And then once we do that, then we can configure the rest of the things that we need. So at some point, I will talk about the entire development environment that we're trying to build, but we're going to have a lot of downtime when things are getting installed, so I'll come back to that. So let's get started with installing Oracle Database 19c. So I'm on the box that I want to install on. Okay, so I'm ready to install. So the first thing I need to do is take my Edge. Now this is a box that I just reset, so there's really nothing installed on it. So I don't even have Chrome installed. So I'm going to use Microsoft Edge, and I'm going to go to developer.oracle.com. Now you can just go to www.oracle.com and navigate your way to the developer section, but Oracle.com as a whole is really more based on selling you software and all the different options. So you're just better off going to developer.oracle.com. Now we have a link up here which is downloads, and that's what we need. Now, but before we do that, let's sign into our Oracle account. You cannot download Oracle software unless you have an Oracle account registered with them. It's free, it's easy to do. So I already have one, but what I want to do is I just want to sign in. So I'm going to go down here to sign in Oracle account. And then now I put in my username and my password, and then I click sign in. Okay, so now that I'm signed into Oracle, when I go to download the software, all I need to do is accept the licensing agreement and then go from there. So I'm going to click on Downloads, and then over here to the right we have Database. So we're installing a database, so we want to click on Database. And this will bring up all your different options for database software. And there's definitely a lot of options, but what we're looking for is just the database. This Database Enterprise and Standard Edition. So I'm going to click on there. And then now we just need to select the right version. So we're installing for Windows 10, which is Windows 64-bit. And the latest version that we have as of right now is 19.3 Enterprise Edition, includes Standard Edition too. So I see here that it's for Windows x64, and it is a 2.9 gigabyte zip file. So I'll click on the zip link. Now, it normally will click, you are going to get a pop-up before this that says, please accept the licensing agreement. I'm surprised that it did not do it this time. So there's one more pop-up window. Maybe in post-editing, I'll throw it in here so you can see what it looks like. So we're downloading the zip file. Okay, now that the zip file is downloaded, I can just get the browser out of the way because I don't need that anymore. And so our next step is going to be to extract that zip file. So my zip file went into my downloads folder. There it is. I'll double click on that, and that will open it up in in Windows Explorer giving me the opportunity to unzip it. So I double click on that, or I could hit right click and open. It's all up to you. This will take a couple of seconds just because of the sheer size of this. It's 2.9 gigabytes. The extract actually takes quite a while because we're also talking about extracting up. It's around 6 gigabytes of files that we have. Now, we need to put this somewhere. Now, when you install a lot of the middleware or desktop tools, when you extract the software, it's just a temporary location. For the database, where you extract the files to is that is going to be the location of your Oracle software forever. So you don't want to use the default Windows x64 DB Home as your software location. You're going to want to create another directory. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do a CMD to get myself to the command prompt. I definitely like I'm old school, so I definitely like working with the command prompt a lot more than working with Windows Explorer. So I'm going to CD to the root, and I'm going to make a directory called Oracle_software. And that's where I'm going to unzip my files to. So now I'm going to go back up to Windows Explorer, and I'm going to click on Extract All. As soon as I do that, it is going to ask me for the directory, and I'm going to put it in the directory that I just created. So I'll navigate to my local drive, to Oracle Software, and hit Select Folder, and then Extract. Okay, so now this is going to take a couple minutes. This is, it's going to take, it actually takes a couple minutes even to discover all the files that are in the zip. So I will fast forward. Okay, so we're back, and the Oracle software has now been extracted into the Oracle software directory. The next step is just going to be to run the installer. Now the installer needs to be run as administrator. So we're going to go down here and find the setup program, and then we're going to right click on it and type in or select the run as administrator link. Okay, it's going to ask me, am I sure I want to be able to do that? And so now it's going to actually bring up the software setup program. Now, in this step, there's just a couple of decisions you need to make. And for the most part, I always just select the defaults. Sometimes I vary it a little bit. I mean, because we're creating a development environment, it's just going to run on a standalone little laptop off in the corner somewhere that we can get to when we need the database. So I don't really see being too creative with this. So the installer is going to come up, and you're going to see that especially on a box that's got weak processing power, you're going to see it's going to take a little while for this to load. Even the main screen takes a few seconds to load. So the default is create a starter database. So we're going to select the default, which is just to install a database and create the starter database. This is definitely the way you want to go. You do not want to just install the software and do everything else manually. That would be a big mistake. So I'm going to click on Next. So now it is verifying the contents of my Oracle Home, which is my Oracle software, which is great. It's there. So now what we want to do is we want to install a desktop class. If you install a server class here, you're going to crush. I would crush that little laptop that I'm on. So I'm definitely not going to do that. So now I'm going to select Next. Now the next part is the account that's going to own Oracle. Now in this case, we're just going to let it use a virtual account. There's no reason for us to be too creative here. We're just trying to get a working database. So we're going to click Next. And now the next step after this is going to be to select a location where we want the database to be. Now it comes up, it kind of makes me laugh because it comes up with an Oracle base that is an invalid directory. So I'm going to go back to my command prompt here, and I'm going to do a make dir Oracle. Because if you try to leave that Oracle base as it is going to throw an error. But it can't be that where the software is installed, and it can't be where any files already exist. So now I'm going to go select my Oracle directory. Okay, so I've now selected my Oracle base directory to be Oracle. That's going to put my database files in a directory called Oracle Oradata. I'm going to leave that as it is. Now, We're going to leave it at Enterprise Edition. We're going to leave the character set as it is. And then you're going to have an Oracle database name. I'm going to just leave this as ORCL. You can call it different things, but it does have ramifications down the line. You're going to need to know the name of the instance or the name of the global database later. So I'm just going to leave it as Oracle. Now, the next thing is to create passwords. The password is the password for the sys and the system account. So you're definitely going to need to remember this. So I am going to put Oracle Training 123 as my password. And then I'm going to confirm it. And then the next step is, do you want to create a container database? Now, I always uncheck this, but it seems to create the container database anyway, which you'll see when I walk you through some of the steps for testing the database. So I'm going to remove the container database, but I'm not really sure what's happening here. So now it is going to start the process of installation. Now, this installation process definitely, well, it can take a while. So the first thing it's doing is its prerequisite checks, and then now we see these are all the locations that everything is going to be located. So I don't really need to change anything at this point, and so now I can just click the button that says install. And that is going to go through the process of installing Oracle. Now, this does actually take, I think the last time I did it on a box that was this week, it took almost an hour to go through this step. So I'll definitely fast forward through it. It actually does look like it's going pretty good, but I think when it gets to about 42% it hangs. So let me just take now as the time to fast forward. But before I do that, you get a message that says Windows Defender Firewall has blocked some of the features of the app. You want to let the Java to get through, and so the firewall. So I'm going to select both public and private networks, because at some point here we are going to take this off of a network that can talk to the internet, and we're just going to have this as our own little private Oracle database. So I'm going to allow access to both the public and the private networks. So I'm going to click on Allow Access, and then it's just going to continue on with the installation process. So let me fast forward at this point. Okay, so we've made it. On this box, this took about 30 minutes to complete, but we're where we need to be. We have now installed everything that we need to install. So the last message that we get is that Oracle Enterprise Manager is at localhost 5500 EM. Don't need to worry about that right now. We're going to test this a different way. So the first thing we're going to do to test the database is we're going to go back and actually, before we do anything, and this is a step that a lot of people miss, and then they're surprised why Oracle doesn't work, because it's not really in the instruction manual. Here is a good time to reboot your server or the box you just installed on. So I'm going to actually do that, because if I don't and things don't work, then I won't know why. So I'm going to hit power, restart, and then I'm going to restart my machine. So once I restart the machine, I'll be able to test Oracle by logging into SQL Plus and making sure everything works. If you haven't noticed by now, I work on a Mac and I am using VNC to connect, remotely to all of the boxes I work on. So all the boxes in my development environment are all on a VNC server, and then I can work with it that way. So right now, the box is installing, and now it is back up. So now I'm going to log back in, and I'm back. All right, so technically we should have an Oracle server installed. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to test it by going to CMD. I'm just going to type in SQL Plus. And there it is. There is SQL Plus. So I'm going to connect to sys as sysdba. Then I'm going to put that password in, which was Oracle Training 123. And now I'm connected. So I'm connected via Enterprise Edition. So I know I have an Oracle database installed. The question now is, can I get to it from the outside world? And I'm pretty sure the answer at this point is no, because I haven't opened up the firewall and I haven't configured SQLnet. So I'm going to go back, and this time I'm going to do SQL plus, and then since I don't want to connect as the DBA this time, I'm going to type in system Oracle training 123 at ORCL. So now this is a connection string. If you're not familiar with the way SQLnet works, there's a file called tnsnames.ora, and that's kind of a directory to where all your different servers or databases that you use are. By default, it's going to put an entry in there for the local box. So, and it's going to have that same name that our service name had, or our database name had. So, of course, I typed in the invalid username or password. So let's see, I did actually type it wrong. So I'll type it in again. Oops. Okay, now I'm connected. So in this case, what it really did is it just pinged off a local host. So it actually used the local host adapter instead of just internal inter-process communications to talk to the database. But we need our database to be accessible from the outside world. So in order to do that, we're going to configure SQLnet. Now, so in this section, what we're going to do is configure SQLnet in order to let other Oracle boxes talk to this Oracle database using port 1521. So now there are two critical files to this. One is called listener.ora and the other is tnsnames.ora, and they're in the software directory. So let me bring up Notepad, or let me bring up Windows Explorer. I'm going to go into Oracle software, and then they're in a directory called network admin. So I'm going to find network and then admin. So in here we have two files that are really important, listener.ora and tnsnames.ora. Let's start with listener.ora, because the listener.ora is what runs to listen for outside connections. So the listener is, it's critical that get configured properly. Now I need to edit this as administrator, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up an administrator command prompt, which I don't think I have one. So I'm going to right click to open up command prompt, then I'm going to right click again to do run as administrator. So now it's going to let me run as administrator, and I'm going to do a CD to Oracle software. And then network, and then admin. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to notepad a listener.ora. Okay, so there's a couple things I need to do. The first thing I need to do is I need to get rid of this host. It needs to not be localhost. It actually needs to be the name of the box that I'm on. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my command prompt and type in host name, because it's going to have some crazy host name. In another video, I'm actually going to walk through the process of changing the name of the computer and then reconfiguring TNS names. But we need our listener to be this host. So I'm going to go over here, I'm going to highlight it and then press enter, and I'm going to come over here and replace localhost. Now I am not going to save the file right away. and I'll explain to you why. But so I've gone here and I've edited it, but I haven't saved it. So now I'm going to go back to my command prompt, and I need to find out what the IP address of my adapter is. So I'm going to type in ipconfig, and that shows me that my IP address is 10.1.10.70. Okay, so I'm going to highlight that, or .79. I'm going to highlight that and hit enter to copy it. What I need to do now is edit the etc host files. So I'm going to open up a different command prompt. You'll see why in a second. I'm going to open up a different command prompt as administrator. And that's got me in the Windows System 32 directory. Now I'm going to do a CD to drivers, then a CD to etc. And then now I'm going to notepad hosts. Now hosts is a file that's part of the operating system that tells network connections. It resolves computer names to IP addresses. So what I need to do is I need to put that IP address in, the 10.1.10.97 or 79, and then I need to take this host name that I got when I typed in the host name command. I'm going to copy that. Okay, so this is both on the same line. So now when we resolve desktop MJ7477, oh, there's a P at the end of that. I want to get that, don't want to miss that. 477P, it is going to go to this IP address. So I'm going to save my etc hosts. So now, oops, not open, save. So now you'll see that if I ping this address, I'm getting a reply for it. So now anytime I am referring to this name, this desktop MJJ, etc., it is going to resolve to 10.1.10.79, and that's what I need in my listener file, because I don't want to listen to 127.0.0.1. I want to listen to my actual IP address of a real network adapter. And just so you know, these are actually hardwired. I have a tiny little network and a tiny little adapter on it. So eventually what I do is I make these static IP addresses. But for now, I now have my TNS or my listener.aura. I've changed localhost to the name of the box. I've gone to etc hosts and made sure that the IP address resolves properly. And then the next step is going to be to stop and restart the listener. So we do this with a command called listener control that you need to run from an administrator command prompt. So you type in lsnrctl, and that brings up this program called listener control. So the first thing I'll do is I'll type in status. And now what the status is doing is it's telling us what we're listening for. So it does say we're listening for the desktop, even though I haven't saved this file yet. We're also listening to 127.0.0.1. And then the services are, ORCL is included. Okay, these other ones, the Oracle XDB, and for the handlers. So we have these handlers for Oracle and Oracle XDB. So we have these handlers, but what we need to do is now we're going to stop the listener. I'm doing this in kind of an order because if you change the listener first, when you go to shut it down, it can't find the thing that it needs to shut down. So now we've stopped the listener. Now I'm going to save the listener.aura file. So now when we restart the listener, it's going to use what is configured in listener.aura. So now I'm going to type in start. So now it's going to start it, and it's going to start it with its new listener.aura file. Now, this may or may not work right out of the box. So it didn't work, and that's fine. See, what you see is the instance that got loaded, the service, is CLR EXT proc. So we're to connect from an outside error. We would get a message that says, listener does not know of the service in the connect string. It is the most common error you always see. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to fix that error right now before we go any further. So the next thing we want to do is tell the listener we want to sync the database and the listener back up. So what we did is we made a change to listener.aura and we restarted TNS listener. Now it's missing the ORCL database. So anybody who tries to connect to this database from the outside world is going to get messages that the listener does not know of the service that we're trying to talk to. So the way around this is to log in as sys. So I'm going to go SQL plus sys, and then it's Oracle training 1, 2, 3 as sysdba. Okay, so now I'm connected as sysdba. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to type in alter system register. Okay, this is kind of a fairly unknown command in Oracle that Oracle DBAs 10 years ago knew about, but you don't see it very often. So you type in Oracle system register. Now if I go back to my listener control and type in status, you'll see now you'll see that ORCL is now there. That is the difference between SQLnet working and not working. Okay, so now the next thing we want to do is we want to configure the TNS names file. So in this case, we want to open and then get back to where we were, which was Oracle Software, Network, Admin, and now we're looking at tnsnames.aura. Now tnsnames.aura is it's kind of a directory. Okay, it tells Oracle what to connect to. So in this case, our ORCL is pointing to localhost ORCL. So that's going to work even if we didn't have the listener created properly, because it's going to localhost. We don't want it to go to localhost. We want it to go to the name of our port. So I'm going to change localhost to make sure that I didn't copy any extra characters in here. All right, so now Oracle is going to go to desktop M7 etc. So now when I hit save, so now if I type in, if I try to go to connect as Oracle, now it's connected again, but it's hugely different, because now when I connect, I'm actually going through the 10.1 IP address, and I'm not going through the 127.0.0.1. I know that sounds confusing, but it's the difference between this working and this not working. And there's one last thing we need to do. We need to go into Windows Firewall. I'll just type in firewall. And we need to open up the port 1521. So you notice that we have our Windows Firewall. We want to go to Advanced Settings. And when we go to Advanced Settings, we're going to create some inbound rules. And this is what ports are we going to let come into our server. So I'm going to create a new rule, and it's a port. And then I hit Next, and then I want to allow port 1521 to be accessible. I want to always allow the connection. So I'm going to allow the connection, I'm going to hit Next, and then I want it for everything. I want it for the domain, the private, and the public networks. And I'm going to give it a name. And then I'm going to finish. All right, good to go. Okay, so now that we have SQLnet installed and we have it configured so that it's listening from the outside world, and we've configured tnsnames.aura and listener.aura, we're done with this step of setting up the database. Now, I'm going to have another video on debugging SQLnet, because people do run into SQLnet issues all the time. But at this point, we've got a working database, so our next step is going to be to install Oracle Forms, Oracle Reports, and WebLogic. Now, that is much more of a daunting task than installing an Oracle database. So join me with the next video, and I will see you then.